Hi viewers, in this video I will show you how I replace the brake shoes on my Jeep Patriot.
First, I park the vehicle on a level surface with the transmission in the park position. The two wheels on the other side were secured with 4-wheel chocks. While the vehicle was still on the ground, I loosened the 5 lug nuts. Since the opposite wheels were secured, it was safe enough to disengage the parking brake to remove the drums later on. When the vehicle was jacked up, I added 2 jack stands to make the working area safer. For those of you who live in a hot region, you might be surprised to see so much rust. Up north, where there is a lot of snow during the winter, tons of salt is added on the roads to melt the ice. Just to let you know, on the 21st of April it was snowing. To begin, I use my hammer to remove most of the rust built up around the drum. Usually, this procedure helps me to loosen the drum when it is stuck on the hub. I could have used the sledgehammer to release the drum, but striking too hard is not good for the bearings. So, to avoid wasting too much time, I decided to use my puller with sharp grips to remove the drum. An easy trick is to use an old drive belt to secure the puller in place. It was also a good precaution to protect myself. It's always difficult to know when the drum is going to pop out. So, I always keep a safe distance when I'm doing this kind of work. When the drum was removed, I had a good look at the brake assembly before removing or cleaning the parts. It's a good time to take some pictures of the setup if needed. As you can see, the brake cylinder was rusted, and the 2 boots looked like they were not properly sealed. Because of that, I decided to use the brake cleaner later, only when the brake shoes would be removed. Even if you know the pre-assembly procedure recommended by Jeep, you can have a look at the way I personally remove and install these shoes. To begin, it was easier to unhook the adjuster spring from the front side. The second hook attached on the adjuster level pawl was easy to unhook. Without the spring tension, this lever was loosely held in place on the pivot and was easy to remove. Next, I had to undo the upper return spring hooked behind the shoes. I used my long nose pliers to fit in between the adjuster and the brake cylinder. It was easier to begin with the hook located near the star wheel. When the shoes were loose enough, I removed the adjuster and the upper return spring. I kept the lower return spring for the end. The old downspring cups can be removed with pliers, brake tools, or by hand. In this case, I use one hand to hold the pin in place from behind the back plate. With the other hand, I use my pliers to compress the whole downspring and rotate the cup. The cup keyhole had to be aligned with the end of the pin to unlock the cup. After that, I worked on the second shoe combined with the brake lever. In this view, you can see how the lever was attached behind the shoe. To disconnect the parking brake cable, I compressed the cable string with one hand. Later on, I placed the old shoes and the new ones side by side on the work table to compare them and reinstall the brake lever properly. I had to remove the clip to undo the brake lever. I checked if it was fitting properly and I installed it on the new shoe. I used the new clip provided with the brake kit when I attached the lever with the new shoe. After, it was time to work on the rust buildup around the brake cylinder. Then it was important to check if the 2 boots were well sealed before using the brake cleaner. When most of the rust was removed, I flipped the boots inside out to check the edges of the cylinder. There was some rust, so I refurbished the two grooves. Then, when it was clean enough, I reseated the two boots in place. After, there was no problem to use the brake cleaner to wash the components. Note the instructions written on the brake cleaner label must be followed. The surface of the hub assembly was also cleaned. Later on, the original hardware components were cleaned. I checked them, and they were still in good condition. I also added brake lubricant on the threaded and the swivel surfaces of the adjuster. After that, I applied brake lubricant on the 6 contact points of the back plate and the lower shoe anchors. As I said earlier, I have my own way to install the drum brakes. So, I began by reattaching the handbrake cable with the brake lever. After, when the first shoe was in position, I used one hand to hold the pin from behind the back plate and the shoe from the side. To lock the parts together, the cup was rotated 90 degrees and released. At that moment, the parts were only roughly positioned. The second shoe was easier to handle, so I compressed the hardware by hand. You see, we don't always need a tool to lock the pin and the cup together. I also checked if they were locked at a 90-degree angle. Next, to firmly seat the shoes on the lower anchors, I attached the lower return spring. First, to prevent the rear boot from moving back during the return spring installation, I lightly clamped the locking pliers on the edge of the back plate. Then, I grabbed the last loop of the return spring with the long nose pliers. Note the tip of my pliers had little grooves to better hold the spring wire. Once done, the locking pliers were removed. To install the adjuster easily, I had to increase the space between the front shoe and the brake cylinder. A simple way to do it was to pull the shoe on the forward side and use the open end of a 10mm wrench to hold the shoe. This helped me to insert and position the adjuster between the two shoes. Next, I put the lever pole in place. To secure it properly, I hooked it with the spring first. The lever pole was also well seated on the rear side of the adjuster. Then the front hook was attached with the front shoe. Here I show some details. Later on, I used a grinder to remove some rust from the drum. I also measured the inner diameter, and it was within company specifications. Since the adjuster was fully retracted, the drum was easy to insert. The adjuster can be expanded with a flathead screwdriver from the opening behind the back plate. But when the drum is easy to remove, I prefer to rotate the star wheel from the outboard position. So I expanded the adjuster with the drum removed. I tried the adjustments a couple of times. Then, when the shoes were lightly touching the drum, I centered them by pulling and releasing the handbrake. After another adjustment, the drum had a minimal drag and was spinning easily. While the hub assembly was easy to access, I applied a coat of anti-seize on the contact surface. I also made sure there was no lubricant on the linings and on the metal braking surface. I reinstalled the wheel and I tested the parking brake again. The jack stands, the floor jack and the wheel chocks were removed. Finally, when the two sides were done, I tested the vehicle on the road. Normally, when the brakes are used in forward and reverse directions, the automatic adjusters keep the brake shoes well adjusted.
For me, it's easy to replace other components at any time if needed, but for most people, the drum and the hardware should be replaced to reduce the risk of having future problems.